Up next is Paul Andrews from AJA, or I always say I go back and forth, Asia, AJA. I'm sure you get that all the time, right, Paul?
That question is often asked, and I was thinking about doing that as one of the polling questions for today, and roll that out. But it depends sort of on the vintage of person you are, because before I joined the company, I made the Steely Dan reference to Asia, and you certainly could say "aha," but the actual pronunciation for the company is AJA. It's the initials.
Speaking of Steely Dan, I think I'll grab a big black cow and get out of here and let you take over, Paul.
That sounds great. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for attending today, wherever you are in the world. And I thought we would go through a number of things regarding some of the streaming solutions that AJA offers. We've had a few out there for a while. If you're familiar with AJA, we've been around for a little over 25 years and are based in Grass Valley, California. And I wanted to talk about three of our products today. The one that we're actually giving away is one of the prizes that for this session, which is the AJA U-TAP. Also our Helo solution, and our newest solution, the Bridge Live. Let's just take a look at here on my desk. I have a couple of the products sitting here, and there's actually the U-TAP that we see here is working right now to stream the camera that it's hooked up to, which is one of the AJA RovoCams. Essentially HDMI in, USB 3 out, and plugs into your computer that turns whatever device you've got in, whether it's a camera or the program feed of a switcher or something like that, turns it into a webcam. And it's super simple to use. And as we go through a few of the slides I've got, we'll get into some deeper components of what it does. But like I said, it's really simple, self-powered on USB 3, and is providing the stream that you see right now of these two devices. Helo, on the other hand, is an appliance, and it has some features on it which allow it to do recording and streaming simultaneously, which is kind of cool. And those streams and records can be different resolutions and frame rates depending on what you're trying to do. Connectivity on the backplane is pretty straightforward. Power, LAN, either SDI or HDMI, and there's a provision for analog audio in and out, which is also kind of nice. But like I said, this is an appliance, so self-contained, but it does have a web GUI that goes with it that allows it to be configured and monitored remotely as you're using the Helo. Let's maybe take a look at a few of the things that I'd like to really talk about today, and starting with a bit of a keynote presentation, really kind of just talking about the three products that we're looking at. Now, I showed you the U-TAP, which is the HDMI version. We also make a version that's SDI, which can be super convenient for like tying into a program feed from a switcher. One of them has the loop through on the SDI path, which is kind of nice if you're using that U-TAP SDI unit. Great for conferencing, all sorts of streaming applications. Lots of tie-ins to different software packages that are out in the marketplace. And it really is a plug and play, because there's no drivers to install with this. They're all, it talks to the video socket layer of the computer that you're plugged in. And it works on Windows, works on Mac, works on Linux, and will stream content that's coming in up to 1080p 60. Which is kind of nice. Lots of different applications for doing getting content out. In this case, it was such a Facebook Live. But again, the UTAP is using whatever software application you have on your computer in order to accomplish the streaming. It's essentially the enabler of getting that video into a form that can be streamed, like we're doing here with Zoom, Teams, things like that. It's a scaler as well. So there's a lot of different resolutions and frame rates that it supports. And it's really kind of driven by the software that you're running. So it's super adaptable in that regard. And with what's been going on in the streaming market, it's been super popular. So it dovetails nicely into what the Helo does. Again, streamer, but it's also a recorder. And like I said, it's an appliance. So it's a standalone box, works with a number of different CDNs that are out in the marketplace. It works with Amazon. You can get content out as their H.264 as a codec, but RTMP streaming, RTSP streaming, HLS. It's really flexible. And on the recording side, USB cards or the SD cards on the front end. You could hook up a power drive to it if you wanted to. It also has the ability to go to a local mount point. So like NFS or SMB as a target for network recording. Pretty basic kind of workflow here, starting with whatever your source is into the Helo, and then you decide how you want to split that up. As I mentioned, it will do recording as a standalone, if you like. It'll do streaming as a standalone, but it'll, as I said, it'll simultaneously do the streaming and recording for your source. This is kind of an example of what the UI looks like. That is an embedded web page that's in the Helo. A number of different presets that are capable of putting into the system. It also has a calendar program in it. So if you want to schedule things, especially useful sometimes with city council meetings and houses of worship, where you've got something that's happening on a regular basis. Super popular in that regard for pre-programming different events. Which is pretty nice. Again, kind of a close-up here of what I was showing in my hand model example of what the hardware looks like, and specifically the connectivity. There are start and stop buttons on the front for the record and the stream, which is nice, but it can all be controlled through that web GUI that we saw on the previous page. If you wanted to, you could even hook it up to a battery source. So you can all of a sudden be connected to a kind of on the fly situation where you can turn a camera or a video source into an IP stream. Again, pretty nice. The third product that I wanted to talk about briefly, and actually, this is going to go a little bit more in depth because I don't have one of these sitting on my desktop. Bridge Live is a product that we rolled out in the fall of 2020. And in some ways, it's kind of the next evolution of what we've decided to do with streaming, doing really high performance content and getting that through a number of different kinds of transport mechanisms. The device itself is really designed for decoding, encoding, transcoding, and doing it bidirectionally, which is kind of a big plus in the box as we go through this. I've got one of these sitting in Grass Valley, California. I'm in Chicago, by the way, so I'm gonna switch over to that UI in a moment, and we'll be controlling it remotely, which is one of the design aspects of how the Bridge Live works, being able to drive it remotely. The idea with this is that you've got some sort of video source that goes into the bridge live, can be encoded as SRT, RTMP, or an MPEG stream, a variety of codecs that are in the configuration for doing the streaming. Super low latency when you get into the RTMP, I'm sorry, the SRT paths. But the RTMP is there for services just like we saw with the Helo, like Wowza, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and those CDNs. On the decode side is pretty much the inverse of the encode side. You take your stream in, you've got these different transport streams that are coming in, you decode them in the bridge live, and you can bust them back out to baseband. So it really kind of depends on your workflow of how you imagine your production or streaming things that you want to roll out in a production, to how you want to configure the bridge. A variety of different places that we see the application for the bridge. It's seems to be taking off pretty nicely in post-production as a way to monitor live post-production sessions or grading sessions, things like that. Sporting events, simultaneously delivering things not only to RTMP, but also high performance content going out for the broadcast trucks. The joint venture on this is actually from AJA and a company called Compromato, which provides the software component of the Bridge Live, where AJA is really doing the hardware side of this. So it's a unification of these different technologies, the software and the hardware, to build an appliance that sits in a rack that's 1 RU in thickness, and that is a pretty compact device that will sit in your rack, full rack width, so you can mount that easily in your equipment room. The back plane of it is pretty straightforward. It does have redundant power supplies, which is pretty nice. There are 2 10 gig NICs in it for network connectivity. And then the AJA Corvid 4412G card in it for doing video I/O. That can be configured for a single stream of 12G SDI, which can handle up to 60p. It can also be configured for 4 channels of 3G SDI, again, up to HD resolution 60p. And each of those streams could be an encode or could be a decode in the 4x3G model. That translates into a lot of power back and forth if you wanted to between a transmit site and a destination site. There's a couple of other ports on it that you can use for monitoring and setup, but generally it's designed to be run remotely. The different kinds of mechanisms it uses for transport, as we talked about, or I had mentioned, the RTMP and RTMP secure streams, RTP and UDP. We think that the ABR ladder profiles for building different deliverables is quite a powerful portion of what the bridge can do. And then the kinds of destinations that you can hit. These are your typical RTMP CDNs. And then the codecs that it can use in the encapsulation of those transport streams. One of them there, which is an option, is JPEG 2000. So you can do streaming of content a little more than 200 megabits per second on the system in 3D HD mode, or if you go into 12G, get over 800 megabits a second, and that would be great for targeting some sort of a mastering service like Netflix or something like that. Then audio support in it with the different audio codecs. You can support metadata in it. So if you've got ad insertion markers in there, it does support that. It supports closed captioning. There's a lot of different metadata that can go along in that ancillary stream that's in the system. And it can actually do a number of things like some color adjustment, some scaling, some down converting. It has the provision in there to put a logo in if you want. So in the case of where you might be streaming as a contribution stream for broadcast, you may not want a logo, but maybe that same content is going to YouTube or Facebook or some other CDN simultaneously, and you want to put a watermark on it. You've got that capability to do that. The final thing in here in the audio processing part is it does have a few tools in there to remap the audio along the for output, and it has a full REST API that if you want to program your own hooks into the bridge, you can. And in fact, that REST API is also in the Helo, and that makes it really nice to tie into automation systems and things like that, and be able to control it with a UI of your own design. That's kind of nice. So let's switch this really quickly to the UI of the Bridge Live, just to take a quick little tour of how it works and how it's set up. I currently have this, like I said, I'm in Chicago and I have this running in Grass Valley, California. And I have 3 streams, or I should say pipelines defined up here on the left side. So there's 1, 2, 3 that are rolling right now. There are some color codes on here that tell me some information about what's going on. The green side of it means my encoder side is working well. The yellow side of it means that there's some sort of alert that's calling my attention to that particular pipeline. And I know in this particular case, it's because I'm doing an SRT stream. And if I look down below, I can see that SRT stream is listening for a connection, but nobody's calling it. So it's essentially just kind of sitting in the background waiting for a call from a decoder somewhere in the world to grab that stream. A few monitoring tools here for looking at what the interface is, what the utilization is of different resources, and then at the bottom, as I mentioned, the tools for looking at what the streams are doing. If we click on any of the pipelines on the left side, that'll take us to the configuration screen where we can see how I've built a particular pipeline. And right now I'm looking at this pipeline called Paul SRT 3G Camera 2. It's using one of the SDI inputs, port 2. It's 1920 by 1080, 2997. There's 16 channels of audio. There's no captions on this. That's my source. Then I define what my output is. It's going to be an SRT stream. It's going to use a MPEG transport stream. I've defined 10 megabits as the total bit rate for going. And then as you kind of go down here, you can keep defining the different kinds of configurations that you need, whether you're using a H.264 codec or a JPEG 2000 codec. Really just kind of depends on what you want to do. And if I If I add another pipeline here, just by saying add new pipeline, you could see that I could have another stream or pipeline defined as the SRT receive. And that then you put in your IP address and which Ethernet card you want to use. And essentially now you're setting up a stream that's 3 channels of encode and a return feed that's decoding. Again, kind of nice to be able to do that and configure that. The first pipeline that I've got here is really about using a single source to define multiple streams. So my first output pipeline is an SRT stream. The second is my YouTube stream. The third is another SRT stream from the same source, but this is scaled down to 720. So there's a lot of flexibility in here. And if I switch, hopefully my live stream is going. It is. So there's the YouTube stream receiving that content off of the bridge in my YouTube account. So it's pretty cool to be able to do that. And at the same time, being able to do multiple SRT streams. And in fact, let's see, I just want to make sure I'm good on time here. Just really quickly, let's go to one of my favorite tools in this, which is Wirecast, and start decoding this at the same time. So if you notice on the left side of the screen of the bridge, now I've got green circles on everything because Wirecast is now calling back to the bridge to get its content. And if we look at any of these different sources, that's 4 streams in real time of SRT, in addition to the YouTube stream that I've got going live as well. So you could really break this apart and do a lot of different kind of complex paths to get things done. The last thing I thought that I'd show really quickly here, let's go back to the bridge, is at least on the UI. Actually, I've got a few minutes here. Eric, are there any questions that have popped up that would be really good to get back to while I've still got the UI up?
You bet. Let me look through and see if there are any that are specifically UI related. One question is about graphics layers. Does it have more graphics layers?
As far as graphics layers, I guess maybe the context of the question I don't quite understand, but when I think of the graphics layers, I guess I'm thinking of what I might do with like the logo insertion here, where I would choose the kind of logo that I wanted and then overlay that and scale it and position it into to the stream. But as far as maybe graphics layers, if I'm thinking of UI controls, there's really only these 2: the pipeline configuration page, which we're looking at right now, and the monitor information that's the main page that you come to. I'm not sure if that answers the question, Eric, or not.
I'm not sure either. So Rajesh or Rajesh, if you have a follow-up there, why don't you type it in and we'll come back to it later. To be honest with you, Paul, the remaining questions are not really, specifically related to the user interface. There's some hardware questions here. So why don't you finish up and then we'll come back to these questions.
Perfect. So let's kind of finish out this, which is essentially, I just wanted to give you some examples of some places where the bridge live we think makes some sense. In this particular instance, we're doing streaming straight to an audience, and that audience happens to be various destinations of YouTube and Facebook, and using either different graphics or cameras or program feeds in order to do that. And then you really just use the IP configuration of the bridge and the port assignments that you have assigned to each of those pipelines to determine the destination of where this is going. And if you're doing for sure over SRT, over the public internet, a lot of these latencies are easily under a second. That's a pretty powerful and fast way to get content across. When you get into RTMP, there's going to be a lot more latency involved in that. But that's really kind of one of the beauties of the bridge, is that you can mix and match the streams that you want to create based on what your destination and production workflow needs to be. A few other examples, doing Ultra HD streaming. Same kind of idea, but you're doing a single stream because you're taking all of the resources of that AJA video card and combine and harnessing that to do the 12G Ultra HD deliverable. And then that deliverable, even though it's one source, is going to multiple destinations in this case. Some of it's a content contribution stream. Some of it is for viewing in the public space of like YouTube or Wowza or Facebook. There's the idea of using this in, like, for example, as I mentioned, post-production, where you may have a number of artists working and you have, let's say, an advertising agency or producers in a remote location who want to evaluate what's going on. Excellent example of how you might do this using Premiere or Media Composer or a variety of different tools for color grading to help them understand the direction of a particular production. Same idea here, but this would be using Ultra HD as the mechanism, so that much higher bandwidth and resolution going down the pipeline for monitoring and for approvals. Then for remote production, you know, what if you've got cameras on set that you want to send back for approval or review, and you're on the other side of the world or the other side of a country or the other side of the city? Doesn't really matter. In this particular case, using one of our Key Pro Ultra 12Gs, recording that on set, but looping that into the bridge for monitoring and sending that back to a remote location. Then on the side of thinking about what you're using for potentially for remote production, you've got multiple cameras. So these could all be ISO cameras, let's say, and sending that back into a studio to do a remote switch or remote recording. Doesn't really matter, you know, what you're necessarily doing. Those cameras could be the production cameras, or maybe let's say camera D is actually more of a what I would say that eye in the sky camera behind in the control room of a production truck that shows what the staff is doing, and that's going back. So that's kind of maybe your talkback camera. There's all sorts of ways that you could configure this for doing different kinds of production. And then this is a good example of taking a 12G signal and sending that into, and actually from one of our routers into the bridge for monitoring back at a data center or a control room somewhere in the world. So those are a number of different ways of thinking about how you might want to use the bridge for encoding. In this case, over the top of a H.265 delivery format that could go out for distribution. Anyway, that is where the bridge live falls. A really quick tour of it, and I certainly, if you want to get more information, certainly you can hit me with questions. You can also certainly hit our reseller channel They are super great at getting information out or scheduling demos or presentations, things like that, that can be done to really dig into a lot of the underpinnings of how this gear works and what AJA has to offer in the streaming segment of our business.
Excellent. Terrific presentation. And we still have 8 or 9 questions here. So let's hop right in. First one's a good one. Paul, there's lots of cheap alternatives out there to get in HDMI through USB for input devices. What is the case for something like the more premium priced UTAP? Is it compatibility? Is it reliability? Is it those things and more?
Well, I guess the price point and things like that are something to obviously to consider. The UTAP is actually we think a pretty inexpensive solution for the reliability that it provides and the kind of hands-off approach that it provides to getting content, whether it's SDI or HDMI, into your system. So the AJA has had a long history of really excellent reliability and great warranty programs if heaven forbid something would happen. And I guess that also speaks to one of the things that when you're in production, you can't afford a failure. You really can't. And we pride ourselves on having really reliable broadcast gear. So I guess that would be my pitch.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Do you need third-party software to use the UTAP, or does it present as a webcam to the system?
It presents as a webcam to the system. It's really simple.
Can't get much simpler than that. Can the Helo be used for webcam capture?
I guess the answer is if that webcam is an HDMI source. If the webcam is an IP stream, the answer is no.
Okay.
The sources for the Helo are either HDMI or SDI. So like I said, if that webcam, let's call it a webcam, is delivering one of those two kinds of video sources, that's what it will take.
Okay. Do any of your USB capture devices do 10-bit color space all the way through? Brad Dixon has the question. He says he understands the UTAP takes in 10-bit, but then converts it to 8-bit.
It certainly is 8-bit on a lot of it, but a lot of it's controlled by the software that it's hooked to. Before I say that it can do 10-bit, I'd rather maybe check on that.
Okay, makes total sense. Another person says, Paul, it's great that the bridge supports H.265, but are there a lot of other decent quality products, platforms, and software to really take advantage of it on the receiving side? It feels like H.265 support across multiple devices and platforms is still really hit or miss.
Well, certainly it's an evolving codec. And certainly a higher quality codec than the H.264 is in the market. H.264 is still far and away the way people encode for doing streaming.
Right.
So I guess the answer on H.265 is it really kind of boils down to the specific need that you have and the decoders that you might be interested in. In the case of like the broadcast contribution, where a production truck and a studio, they very likely would have a bridge live on each end, and that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
A lot of the broadcast companies, Fox, the major networks, are doing exactly that, where we've got some churches that are just using H.264 and actually having 2 bridge lives in 2 locations, doing contribution streams over SRT simultaneously back and forth between the two churches, and the ministers at both locations are having a dialogue during service.
Oh, wow. Great.
That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. And that really gets down to the point that you can get down to somewhere in the 500 to 600 millisecond kind of latency when you're using SRT.
Right. Absolutely. The next question, might AJA come out with a small, simple, lightweight in terms of features, multi-channel flash card or USB recorder anytime soon? Really like to find something to handle at least 4 simultaneously records to fill a mid-range budget space at a higher quality that doesn't have a name that rhymes with one of your competitors.
Well, as a an offering that we do have, the Key Pro Go is a H.264 multi-channel recorder. Records to USB flash drives or a USB powered hard drive. It also has the ability to do network recording in it. It has the same footprint as the Key Pro Ultra pluses that were in the marketplace, or the Key Pro Ultra 12G, which is our more high quality, I would say, offering. And the Key Pro Go has the ability to change the bit rates on each of the channels. And that may be something that fits into the production needs that you're talking about.
Okay. I love it when people are able to take the opportunity in our workshops to get some live product support. And maybe this is a question that is outside the scope of this, but Travis Kendall says, I've had an issue with my U-TAP disconnecting after hours of use. Is the U-TAP meant to run for an extended period of time?
Yeah, it is. It is intended to run 24/7.
Okay.
So if those kinds of things are happening, I would definitely call support. And just oh, by the way, there was a firmware release that just came out in the past couple of weeks that you might want to take a look at and make sure that your U-TAP is upgraded.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Can streams be recorded in Bridge Live?
No.
Okay. That answers that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's designed as a conduit, an encoder
Sure.
decoder, and there's no onboard storage. You would have something at the source side that might be a playback device, or at the destination side, that when the system breaks that content back out to baseband, whatever it is, it would be recorded at that point.
Sure. It's named Bridge for a reason, right? It's a bridge.
Right. Right.
Exactly. We got a couple of questions here about pricing for Bridge, UTAP, Helo. Can you talk at all ballpark prices for those?
So the UTAP I believe is $345 MSRP. The Helo is $1295 MSRP, and the Bridge Live is $14,995 MSRP.
All right, that wraps it up. I'm going to announce that wraps it up for questions, unless someone has another one they want to bring in. There was a follow-up about that graphics and logo question, but I am going to, you wanted to know about more than just logos, lower thirds. Are those possibilities as well?
Only if the lower third is a logo.
Okay.
So I guess the answer is the idea is to really to give you the opportunity to watermark some content, not as some sort of a CG or graphics device.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for that presentation, Paul.